You probably know somebody who has cheated the government out of a few tax dollars by renovating their home and paying for it under the table. The underground economy, some say, accounts for as much as 1/5 of all economic activity in this country. But now a new study says the underground economy is at most just 2.7% of the economy, and it identifies these key areas of underground activity. Unreported income by businesses, for example, home renovations. Contraband tobacco. Alcohol that is contraband or illegally manufactured. And tips for meals, taxis, and so on. Activities such as prostitution, pornography, and drug trafficking are not included. The StatsCan estimate of 2.7% may sound small, but it could still mean as much as $18.5 billion worth of legal business not reported or taxed in 1992 alone. Well, joining us tonight, Gillian Gervais, the author of that study. She is a senior advisor at Statistics Canada's National Accounts Division. The Statistics Canada report does not mesh with what many others have said about the true size of the underground economy, and one of those is Peter Spiro. He's the Senior Policy Advisor for the Ontario Ministry of Finance and the government's expert on the underground economy. Well, Mr. Spiro, let's hear from you on the size of this economy. Ms. Gervais says less than 3%. It couldn't possibly be 10 or 15 or 20 because there's just not that much money in the economy. What do you think about the figures? What's your estimate?
Well, Pamela, I have to agree with Ms. Gervais. I don't think it could be 15 or 20%, not because it's impossible. There are obviously some countries where it's even 50%, but I've looked at those studies that said it was 15 or 20%, and I think their methodology is flawed. They base it on the amount of cash in circulation, right. And
so what's your best guess then?
Well, I haven't done a definitive estimate, so I guess you could call me neutral, but I would say that it's probably somewhere in between the two extremes, probably something on the order of 8 to 10% of GDP. I should say I think StatsCan has done a bit of a disservice in releasing this report, because the underground economy is a very important issue and it needs a lot more study. Basically, we have to say we know very little about its size, and the StatsCan study is, I would say, almost dishonest in pretending that they know a great deal about it. I think it was apparent.
What is the flaw there? Because it's certainly the question I put to Ms. Gervais. I mean, if people are being quizzed on how much money they spent and then dutifully paid taxes on, are they really going to be honest when StatsCan phones them?
Well, exactly. I think it was apparent in your question where you were talking to her about home renovations. They naively suppose that when they send a questionnaire to somebody, that those people will give an honest answer on the grounds that it's the contractor that's liable for the tax and not the homeowner who does the renovation. But if a person puts an illegal basement apartment into his house, he's not going to trust any government agency and give an honest answer about it. Another example, they assume that retailers, small retailers, underestimate sales by 10%, but they just pick that number out of thin air. They have done no studies. They assume that businesses with sales above $1 million don't understate their income at all. That's, I think, clearly unsupportable.
One of the other figures that jumped out at me, I guess, and I guess this is always a topic of discussion, particularly around budget time, is that 85% of all the economic activity in this country is generated by big business, and those are the guys that pay tax. Is that a reasonable statement?
Well, that's the problem. We really don't know. Again, StatsCan claims that they know how many businesses there are in the country, but I would submit that there are a lot of small service-type businesses that are really underground, in the sense that StatsCan hasn't even counted them. I mean, StatsCan makes substantial errors just in counting people who don't have to pay tax. They're going to make even bigger mistakes in counting businesses that do have to pay tax. So I can't say that their study is wrong. What I have to say is that their study is unsubstantiated. They've made assumptions. All they're doing is adding up a lot of assumptions, and going through their report, I found that virtually every one of their assumptions was on the optimistic side, naively optimistic.
Let me ask another question on that, because Ms. Gervais said, you know, if you took the largest estimate, it would work out to about $10,000 a household in Canada of underground activity that would have to be going on. Is that unreasonable when you think about renovating a house, the purchase of service, sons and daughters going out and mowing lawns and babysitting? All of that activity goes on.
Yes, it does. And again, you don't have to assume that it's spread out evenly over everybody. It doesn't mean that every single household has to have 10,000. You'll have some households that are entirely underground, and you'll have some that partake less in it. And quite often, you don't know if you're engaging in an underground transaction. You buy something from somebody, you don't know if he's reporting tax on that.
All right, let me ask you a couple of specific questions about, I guess, why we care. Because when we hear from government officials who say this is a huge problem and it's contributing to the debt and the deficit, and we're going to crack down on all these tax cheats in the underground economy, do they need to if it is roughly 8 to 10% of the economy, as you suggest, as opposed to 2.7% as StatsCan suggests?
Well, it's a serious problem, and obviously that represents a lot of tax evasion. It's a problem in all countries around the world. Canada is estimated to be near the median for industrialized countries, and as Ms. Gervais says, it has been increasing. I would say, based on some studies that I've done since the introduction of the GST, looking at the very large increase in cash in circulation, it's up 14% over the past 3 years, the biggest increase in 4 decades. That's an indication that the problem has been worsening. And incidentally, while she admits based on some other indicators that it's been growing, the actual methodology that she used for her study, that is in no way capable of measuring whether it's growing or not.
Okay, one final quick point. You're making your comments about the GST, obviously, but I'm wondering if there is all this activity going on, whether the recession is as bad as it's made out to be.
Well, what it suggests, for example, I would say that possibly GDP has grown about 2 percentage points more over the past 3 years, up to 2 percentage points more than StatsCan has reported. That still leaves it as a very serious recession, because some people estimate, based on official data, that the economy is about 12% under capacity. Even if you were to add 2% back to that, which is my estimate of how much it has grown, how much the underground economy has grown over the past 3 years, you would still have a huge gap.
Interesting debate. Statistics, damn statistics, and lies. I guess that's always the basis of these discussions, isn't it? Thanks a lot, Mr. Spiro.
You're welcome.
Please stay with us when we return. The uncertain future of hockey in this country.